Well, hey guys, my name is Steve Garland, and I'm the head wrestling coach at the University of Virginia. Quick background on me, I wrestled at the University of Virginia undergrad. It's my alma mater. I was an NCAA finalist there in 2000, then started my career at Cornell University right after that. Was there for 6 years. Got back to UVA as the head coach in 2006, and I've been there ever since. So that's it. I'm not going to go any further than that other than to give you a quick background on who I am. And whenever I speak, I like to give the people I'm talking to an idea of what they're getting themselves into. I know for me, I'll be halfway through church sometimes and be thinking, where are we going with this? And so I want to make sure everybody knows the structure here. So first, I'm going to start with a warning. Then I'll give you a preface, which is going to have the structure of the talk, and then I'm going to end with a story before we get into the meat of what we're talking about. So the warning, first of all, and I'm not trying to be funny when I say this, I got a concussion right now. I'm a little loopy, a little more loopy than usual. Guys watching this who know me were like, yeah, you're pretty much a degenerate animal anyway, so it's probably not going to be too much off the beaten path from what they're used to hearing from me. But I will say that something goes wrong here, that's why. Number two, the preface, the structure of the talk, very simple presentation. I'm going to give a simple talking point, give you an illustration from my own life to illustrate the point, and then I'm going to have a practical application for those listening. And the key to the illustration, and I'm just being totally honest with this, is typically me screwing up. One, so you know I'm not holier than thou, that I'm preaching at you, and two, that you know that it's a real impact, a real story from my life where I've messed up in some way in this in the talking point area, and how I've learned from that, and how I can hopefully help you learn from that, and we all learn going forward. So again, the preface, the structure will be talking point, illustration, and practical application. That all said, I want to start with a story that hopefully sets up the entire theme for this talk. And I'll get to that once I tell the story. So the story goes like this. This is called the parable of the farmer and the lost dog. So there was a farmer. He lived on a farm alone with two boys. It was just him and his two boys. He was very close with his boys. He did everything with them. They did everything with him. They looked up to him and modeled everything they saw their dad do. They were very close family. One day on the farm, a dog came by, a lost dog. And they took the dog in. The boys immediately fell in love with the dog, and it became a family dog. Well, about a week after that dog showing up on the farm, maybe it was a week and a half, some time passes, not a lot of time, but enough time for those boys to bond with that dog. Another family shows up at the front door. This time it's a neighboring farmer with his two boys. He shows up at the door and he says, "Sir, I lost our dog. My boys are really struggling. We heard somebody say that you might have seen him or had some interaction with him." And the dad looks at him and says, "No." The farmer looks at him and says, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." The guy with the lost dog keeps going further and he says, "No, you have to." And he explains the very last detail of what the dog looks like, even down to the very collar he's wearing. And the dad says, "No, I'm really sorry. I haven't seen the dog. I can't help you," and shuts the door in his face. Dad turns around and he sees his two boys. They were there the whole time watching the interaction. The father had no idea the boys were there. And the story goes like this. That day, that man gained a dog, but he lost two sons. That day, a man gained a dog, but he lost two sons. And I hope that the point of that story is pretty obvious, but that's going to set up everything I'm going to talk about. And really it's this: when nobody is watching, the title of the talk is "When Nobody is Watching, the Leadership That Actually Matters." And I've got a little subtitle here that hopefully you can carry on throughout the theme of the talk, and that's "You are who you are when nobody is looking." You are who you are when nobody is looking. I stole that. I got to give him credit from Rob Cole, my old boss and mentor. He said that to me when I was a young punk kid at I think I was 21, 22 years old when he said it to me the first time, and it really resonates with me even today, now at 48. You are who you are when nobody is looking. So that's my intro. First talking point number one. Leadership when nobody's watching. This is internal, so you guys will see the theme where I'm going with this. The first one is know your why. Be rooted and grounded in your why. I always tell my guys, if the why's not right, nothing is right. And I know that sounds cliche. You've heard people say that before. You've probably heard speeches where that's been, one of the key things they talk about. But I'm telling you, I lived it out in my own life, and this is my illustration, living this out in my own life. In 2010, we had just won the first ACC Wrestling Championship at UVA in 33 years. I was named ACC Wrestling Coach of the Year. I had a stud guy named Chris Henrik who took third in the nation. It was this close to being a national champ. And I just thought I knew everything. I was riding high. I had everything that I had set my heart on that I wanted. I had a beautiful wife, two kids, first ever house, white picket fence, head coach at my dream job, ACC Coach of the Year, ACC champions. I had it all, but I really had nothing. And the truth of it is, anybody close in my inner circle that were around me, including my staff, by the way, would tell you that I was a very hard person to be around. So I had accomplished all these things that I thought were going to make me happy and make me somebody. And when I got to that mountaintop, I realized that I was somebody that nobody wanted to be around. That's a pretty scary place to be. And I'll tell you how I got called out on this. Hopefully ties this together. I was at an FCA Leadership Academy, very similar to the convention we're at now. And a mentor looked me right in the eye in the middle of his talk and said, "What's your why, coach?" And it caught me so off guard. Isn't that insane? I'd been coaching at that point for 10 years, National Coach of the Year, ACC Coach of the Year, I'm Big Steve. And when he looked me in the eye and said that, I honestly didn't know what to say back. Because I was gonna give him one of these cliches, we're building champions on and off the mat. One of those things. It's like, that's a bunch of bull crap. Really, it hit me that night. I couldn't sleep. I was thinking about it. What really is my why? Because I don't even remember the answer I came up with, but I remember him looking at me like, somebody can convict you with their eyes? I remember him looking at me like, and it just totally got me. And I'm laying in bed thinking, I don't know. I better figure this out. And so I went on a journey at that point. Very shortly after that, something happened in my world, that little wrestling world that I thought was such a big deal, that rocked my world. I actually thought I was gonna lose it all. And it was through prayer, through supplication, on my knees, through submission, that I came up with this diagram in my prayer journal of what my why was gonna be and then how I was gonna live that out. And this is gonna sound so simple, maybe even borderline insane to some people because it's so obvious, but to me, I had to learn it the hard way. On my knees in that prayer journal, I wrote out, the first thing you do when you're ever making any decisions, when no one's around, is you think, does it honor God or not? Is it line up with His will, His laws, what His best for your life is or not? If not, abort mission. Number two, there's somebody else involved in this decision. Does it hurt them? If it hurts them, this person that you really don't care about probably, you don't do it. Because that's God's child too. That's His image bearer. You don't do it. And the next step was, oh, by the way, this calling that He's given you, you always talk about this calling you have as a coach. Well, if it affects that in any negative way, you don't do it. And then, oh, by the way, this shouldn't be last. I'm just putting this the way I wrote it in my diagram. All that stuff then affects your family, because if I lose the job, I can't provide for the family. So if you love them like you say you do, you won't do it. And that put things in perspective. Just having my why right put so many things in perspective. I got to start applying that diagram to my life. And again, that may sound obvious, but it wasn't for me. So maybe somebody out there listening, maybe you're dealing with the same thing. I know for me, that was a huge turning point in my life. And that verse, the verse that I wrote down, again, all in that time frame, was Colossians 3:23. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as if working for the Lord and not for men. Work at it with all your heart as if working for the Lord and not for men. And that's the practical application here, because how does this practically apply to anybody else? Well, when you have a purpose, a true purpose, and your why is rock solid and you're rooted and grounded in that, it starts changing. First of all, your standards way higher. Secondly, it changes the way you live. And here's what I mean, especially for outcome-oriented people, athletes, coaches, whatever. You start thinking about being faithful as opposed to being successful. Mother Teresa once said, we're not called to be successful, we're called to be faithful. And that's another quote that I really latched onto that changed my life, is I was so obsessed with outcomes that I started to lose my mind. And I started to do things I shouldn't have been doing to get to success, what I thought was success. So you start being instead concerned about being faithful, process, as opposed to success, outcome. And very similarly connected to that is you start then focusing on impact over outcome. I had a mentor of mine, Richie McKay. He was the associate head coach at the UVA basketball team, who eventually won a national title shortly after him getting there. First ever national championship in UVA basketball history. He looked across the eye at me at a function, at a ministry outreach, and said, hey, buddy, you need to start getting a lot more focused on impact and a lot less focused on outcome, because you're starting to become that guy. And you know how somebody in your life can call you out and give you hard truth? Man, he did.